What is up, everybody? RLTK podcast. Jordan here, chilling with my boy Chris. Chris, what's cracking?
Man, let me tell you something, man. Talk about the Cowboys real quick. You know what I'm saying? Because you already know, man. You already know. Obviously, you know, it's the first game, but it's the proof that it's our year. See, here's the thing, man. You know, Dak just got a big contract. You know, Zeke is looking healthy. I ain't gonna lie. I had my doubts about Zeke. I did.
He was looking good. You see that first play, bro? He just jumped over, dude.
Yeah.
He's like, he wanted to let everybody know, hey, I'm back.
Oh, yes.
And
yes.
I mean business.
I need that one when you first came in the game. I need that Zeke. I need that grind mode. I need that monster. I need that animal, bro.
Facts.
Dog. It's our year, man. That's all I'm saying. I understand we got our doubters out there. Listen, it's the reason why we're a star. It's the reason why our label is a star. You understand what I'm saying? We're stars out here. We're in the
So
skies.
when we drop this
Beyond
podcast, we'll be in week 3 of the season, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Because we're gonna hit the game, Saints Cowboys this weekend.
Sir.
Let's go.
Yes, sir.
And
Sorry, Saints, man, take this.
Should be a dub. Shout out to my boy Drew, who's finna be holding that L.
Facts.
When we go to the game this weekend.
It's sad, man. I don't understand why people I don't understand why. Look, why support any other team? To be honest,
because you hate God.
Oh,
that must be what it is, in my opinion. Just, you know, America's team, God's team, bro. It is what it is. Well, speaking of God, let's get to our podcast.
Yeah, I know, right?
So we were thinking, since the last time we were together, we were talking about Gen Z and them being hungry for worship, and then we got into this idea of discipline.
Yeah, being hungry. Yeah.
I thought it'd be a good idea today if we jumped into the spiritual discipline specifically. And so spiritual discipline is obviously something that's essential in any Christian's life. Like, we all know that we've all got to have some level of, discipline, period. But then spiritual discipline is even more significant.
Yeah.
But as I think about this generation, I want to start by asking you this question, Chris. Like, what do you think spiritual discipline means? And how do you see that fitting into the fast-paced, tech-driven world of this generation and the generations that are coming up too?
Yes. That's the. Well, I'm glad you brought that up, right? The generations that's coming after us, right? Because I am thinking about Gen Alpha.
Yeah, it's not just Gen Z now. We got to talk about Gen A too.
Exactly. Well, I mean, let's to have this conversation, let's paint a picture, right? Let's do our best to paint something here that we can all perceive. We live in a society that is made to build, be sustained, procreate, and pass down. How can you do that outside of the form of discipline, right? I don't think you can sustain a society without discipline, right? I don't think you can sustain anything without discipline, right? And so I think with that picture in mind, right, I think of discipline is the tool to pursue the good, right?
That's good, bro.
It's
tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, like, when I think about discipline, bro, I think about what is the purpose of why should I beat myself up constantly? Why should I train myself? Why should I read, work out? Why should I work hard on my craft of any gift that I have? Right? Because I can be disciplined in studying. I can be disciplined in relationships. I can be disciplined in a business. I can be disciplined in my job.
Yep.
But what is the point of all of that if it doesn't produce this thing that we call good, or I would say righteousness, right? I think
the discipline has to be heading in a direction.
It has to be headed into a direction, right? And obviously you said spiritual discipline. Now this is interesting to me because not just discipline in itself and the idea of craft and shaping your body how you want it to be and mental toughness and things of that nature. But now we're talking about spiritual discipline. This has to deal with the soul, right? Internal work, some may say. And then, you have conversations with people. A lot of them say, I'm not religious, I'm just spiritual, right? Which I understand to a degree, but my question for that is, what governs that?
Yeah, and what do
right?
you actually mean when you say
What
that?
do you mean by
Because I know what
that?
you mean when you say that.
Yeah. And so it's like, what governs your idea of spirituality? And
I
I
mean, that's a
think,
good point because I
right?
think people use spirituality as a wholesale word to
Mhm.
suggest that they're kind of just whatever they're doing is whatever they're doing.
Yep.
And you don't have any capacity to judge what it is that they're doing or not doing,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
So it's like, hey, I have this spirituality that's kind of just random and basically essentially however I want it to be, right?
Right. It's left to be determined by you.
Mhm.
But I think, but you have to beg the question: discipline is a governmental tool for not just, I mean, we could say spirituality, morality, ethics, all those come into play, but it's a governing tool, right?
Mhm.
All things has to be governed. And so for me, when I think of spiritual discipline, that's what I think about. And I think that's why religion is important, even though religion has its criticisms.
Yeah, there's this it
It, it
is this thing that restrains the evil in humans.
exactly, it is to govern you. It's to govern you. That's why we have the seeking of counsel and prayer and things of that community, and then so that's why we have these things. So when I think of spirituality, that's what I think. The
That's
the
good.
the the, the tool of governmentship
Mm.
of
For the
the
individual
soul. Yeah,
and the well, and you could argue the community too.
exactly. Yeah.
So when I think of spiritual disciplines, I mean, what does it mean to me? I mean, essentially, it is me saying no to things that are going to pull me away from God and yes to things that are going to draw me closer to Him.
Yeah.
I think that's a very like simple way of me putting it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saying yes to God and no to anything else that's going to deter me from Him or pull me away from Him, distract me from Him.
Yeah. Mm.
The interesting thing
That's
about the world
interesting.
we live in now is I think spiritual disciplines are becoming even more important, or just the concept of discipline, period, but
Yeah.
spiritual discipline even more so.
Yeah.
And I think that is because we live in a world that is ordered and shaped around us individually, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, particularly in the West, like it's
Especially
about
in the
me,
West.
what I want, what I need, when I need it, how I want it. Like, I want something, I can order it on Amazon and get it the next day.
Yeah.
Like yesterday was my son's birthday,
Mm-hmm.
and he got like a little Lego toy in the morning. And I was like, yo, it'd be dope to get him some more Lego.
Yeah.
I ordered him some Lego. It was there in 2 hours from Amazon.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to go to the store. I didn't have to rush around or nothing. I went on my phone like, yo, let me get him some Lego cars he can build that are like a little bit more complicated. This will be dope.
Yeah.
2-3 hours, it's at my house. And so that level of convenience, once again, what we have to recognize is that does something to us. It does something to our psyche. It does something to our like capacity for discipline. It does something to our worldview, right? And so, like, as we have a world that's shaped around convenience and now and tailored to me through marketing and the specificity of things that come up on my social media feed, right? And all the ways that I have options to choose what I want, right? It creates this environment where I essentially don't really have to work for anything anymore. Do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
Like,
I do.
delayed gratification is not a thing. Doesn't have to be.
It now exists.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
fundamentally, in what it means to like be a Christian, follow Jesus, delayed gratification is like something we see throughout the scriptures.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the
Hastiness.
ultimate delayed gratification is like, yo, you'll see Jesus face to face at the end of your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And to some degree now we struggle and toil in this life, trying to follow him, trying to see him, trying to hear him, trying to honor him.
Yeah.
Until we get to the place where we see him and know him, right?
Yeah.
Fully, and we know ourselves fully.
Yeah.
And so we live in a world that is designed to erode that idea away.
Correct.
And so I think for a generation that's been raised by technology, where that idea is fundamentally being eroded away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Discipline and delayed gratification and staying consistent on things and like waiting to see results over the long haul is incredibly important. And I think it's at this point countercultural, right?
But why though?
Because like our culture isn't designed that way anymore. And I think that is a part of what it means to be a Christian that can be I think, very enticing to people.
Mm.
Like, wow, you have patience for that. Wow, you have peace in the midst of struggle. Wow, you have joy in the midst of, like, those things. Those things are developed throughout the course of the Christian life, right?
Yeah. Well, it's a level of I would say conscious awareness.
Yeah.
A level of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, has to be. Well, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I want to dive into that real quick because
Okay.
I'm trying to find the words of I'm trying to find the words of what I'm trying to say here. Like, it's almost in the sense of desensitizing.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
But what is it desensitizing? How do I say that word? Desensitizing. What is it desensitizing? Right? Is it the sense of duty, work, ethical responsibility?
All of it, I think.
I understand in the sense of conveniency is a harm. Interesting. It may be part of harm, but it seems to be that now conveniency is harm. It's harm to the spiritual nature of man. It's harm to the mind.
I think if we let it
Right?
be, yeah.
Right. And so, because if everything's at the touch of a button, swipe left and right, there's really no work. Interesting, right? Solomon questioned, what is the purpose of work? What is the reward of toil? Right? And so I think, could we say it desensitizes the value of work? Right? Can we say that? Because work requires discipline. Work requires an effort
I mean, I would say, yeah, because if we look at this generation that's coming up, that's one of the things that they struggle with a lot. Work, thinking they're going to leave college and get $100,000 a year job.
Some think that, yeah. Some do,
right?
right?
And so,
yeah, that's. So what does that mean, right? So for me, when I think of that, I think because, like, okay, so for example, me trying to be more disciplined in my life, right? Trying to work at certain areas in my mind, untangle some things that I'm struggling with and wrestling with. Those things requires from me to be aware of those things, right? It requires to me to understand this is what it is, right? Recognize the problem. First thing to do is recognize that there is a problem, right? But also, it recognizing that there is a problem, and I'm also tempted to ignore the problem, desensitize it, leave it alone, not put any effort into it, and lean to what is convenient for me. And I think one of the reasons why we lean towards conveniency, because I don't think we actually understand the true value of the long game necessarily.
Yeah, but I would say, once again, that's baked into how we live. Like, everything's about the now.
Yes, obviously, yes, I agree with that.
And I think there's also a difference between having convenience as an option. So, like, yo, I got off work late and I can go home and cook, or I could pick up In and Out.
Yeah,
I'm gonna pick up In and Out tonight. I usually go home and cook.
Yeah,
but it's late. I'm just gonna pick up some In and Out. I'm gonna enjoy that, and tomorrow I'll cook. And then the difference being, no, convenience is what I choose at every turn.
Yeah, right. You're saying it's a norm, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not just an option now. It's like
it's
the
norm.
default.
It's the default. Yeah. I don't know if it's a default.
I think in culture it is.
You think we're inclined? It's
To
automatic.
convenience.
Automatic.
I think we look for it. The path of least resistance.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, I mean,
and I think that has implications for how we live. It shapes us.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Right?
Yeah, it's fair enough.
And so I think, once again, back to the spiritual disciplines, doing those things starts to shape us in a different type of way. And I think what's really important for this generation is to have it demonstrated to them what it looks like for a life that's been shaped by spiritual disciplines. Their leaders, their pastors, their parents, their teachers, like, how are those people being shaped by spiritual disciplines as opposed to the convenience that they see in the world? Because, once again, I can tell them till I'm blue in the face, like, yo, I follow Jesus, I love Jesus, you should too. But what does that actually look like? How is it different how is it going to affect my life? How is it affecting your life?
Yeah.
How has it transformed you?
Yeah.
And if it hasn't, then why am I going to do anything different? And I think ultimately that's what we're seeing with this generation, right? Like, they're like, okay, you're telling me to follow this Jesus dude. What's he doing for you?
Yeah.
How's your life changed?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How are you a different person? Because you're doing the same things I'm doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You're as anxious as I am, if not more. You have less peace than I do.
Yeah.
And so I think they see those things, right? And I think some of that stuff, it could be because we're going through a difficult time, but even how do we handle difficult times? Yeah. I think it's more likely that it's because we're being undisciplined, because ultimately we're also being shaped more by the culture and not paying attention to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Than we are being shaped by
I agree with that.
The world.
Yeah.
Or no, we are being shaped by our faith, not the world.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, well, it's also the thing about discipline, man. How can discipline be interpreted? I think discipline is also interpreted by the idea of lack of choice and the idea of no freedom, right? Because you're not able to do whatever you want to do, right? You're not able to indulge in the things that you desire, right? And I think that's the that's the enemy, not in the sense of the enemy, but in the sense of what opposes discipline is the human will, right? Desire. And I think if free will is a thing, God calls us to surrender that, right? To give that up for the sake of the good. And like what we ended on the last podcast, we're slaves to the good, right? We're slaves to the good.
If we're in
right?
Christ, yeah.
If we're in Christ, you're a slave to the good. You have really no choice, which speaks to the idea of force, by the way, because like how do I say this? Because I don't want it to be a negative term. It's a good term. The force of good is a good thing, because lead me in this direction, because there's no way my choices can set me free in the way that you can, right? There's no way that my choices can benefit me in the way of the righteous standard of Christ, right? There's nothing that can, I don't know what can really do. I don't know what I can really do in that manner. So to a degree, we have to, there's a level of force there, right? That the metaphysical enforcer of good, the consciousness, the spirit of Christ, which leads us to and pushes us towards, reminds us of Christ in the scriptures. Like he reminds us of those things. Yep. He aids us in this way, right? Yep. Like he said, I'm a send a helper, someone that will aid you, right? And so there is this beautiful force that comes along on your side. It's like this point, right? It's like, what has he done for you? Well, he's given me a positive enforcer of good, and it's the spirit of Christ. Yep. And what he does is pushes me towards the image of Christ, right? The ultimate good. And when I do wrong, he doesn't leave me alone. He bothers me constantly. He messes with my consciousness, because he knows what my aim ought to be. Right. And I think this does flow into the conversation of spiritual discipline, how we can lean into, how we can be more, because we're talking about being like Christ, right? And so I think being spiritually disciplined is
is important.
Necessary.
Well, let me ask you this.
Necessary.
What spiritual disciplines, when you think about spiritual disciplines, right? Because there's lots of them. What do you think are the most essential spiritual disciplines for this generation of coming?
Well, I think the mind, really. I think the mind.
But what practically should they be doing that you think would really benefit them?
Focusing on what to ponder. David said in Psalms, the mind that meditates on the word of God is like the tree planted by the river. I think that's a spiritual practice. I think practicing what to meditate on, what to think about, what you think is what you are, what you think is what you become. For some reason, thinking, it creates a pattern of behavior. And so I think what you meditate on a daily basis, what you think about on a daily basis, That's even a practice that I'm trying to practice.
Yep.
Right? What is something that I can meditate on that can shape me more into the image of the good daily? Because I struggle constantly with anxiety, with own self-hatred, uh, doubt. These things seep into my mind and enter in as just negative thoughts all the time. And so, and sometimes I struggle with sleep, right? And so these things, meditating on what is good has to work for me. And I think and I think because Scripture says that too, if you meditate on the Word of God, the law of God, you're like the tree. It paints an image. You're like the tree planted by the river,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your leaves won't wither. You'll bear good fruit. Like the fruitness, the goodness of God flows. It flows into you when you meditate on Him. So there's something about that practice alone that bears uh, um, good fruit within you. So that's what I would say.
No, it's really good, bro. And
Right.
I think, like you said, it's particularly important for this generation because of the anxiety, because of the depression, because of the negative thoughts about self, because of the comparison, and like they live in this world that is in their mind, right? And I think obviously there's people like yourself who are not in that generation that wrestle with the same things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like meditating on the word is essentially allowing yourself to live by a different worldview, right?
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to be shaped and crafted and molded and have the perspective of the scriptures, which
Well,
is ultimately going to help you see the world a different way and ultimately help you have different thoughts about the world around you and yourself.
yeah. Well, also to believe something different, right? Belief is a very big thing. And look, man, I know we're hopping into a conversation, man. It's very complex, and I'm doing my best to find the words here because I to a degree I understand the weight. Well, I understand the struggle within trying to be a better human, right? And be a better person, and also I understand that there is a God that loves, and there is a God that serves, and there is a God that's faithful, and He calls us to be a particular thing, and that's why I painted that picture earlier of a society that is made in a particular way to continue, not to die out. We weren't made to die. We were made to live.
It's good.
And so if we were made to live, our burden is to maintain that, right? It's sadly that's our burden. Our burden is order. And so I think that requires a profound amount of work, not just physical work of building structures and creating laws and policies, but understanding that the spiritual aspect of this life and spiritual influences, right, that seep into our minds and the things that we entertain, right? That's like you talked about what is one thing that Gen Z can do. Be aware of what you entertain.
That's good.
Right? You have to be aware of what you entertain in society, right? Not all things are good, but all things are perceived as good, right? To some people, right? I guess because we also lean into relativism and preferences and things of that nature, subjectivism. And so we have to make proper distinctions of what is good and what is not, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to know what is actually good, not just perceived to be good because it's pleasurable, it's satisfying for a moment, but what is ultimately long-term good. And whatever that is, that requires an ultimate amount of discipline to achieve that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
I think, I would definitely agree with you on meditating on the text.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think I would add silence and solitude. And that probably sounds difficult and crazy, especially for this generation, but I think we have to create space for silence. And I think part of our obligation as the leaders, if you will, of this generation, whether it's the youth pastor or the parent or the coach or the teacher, whatever, is to create room for silence. Because the truth is, they're probably not going to do it themselves. And so, how can we create space in the classroom? How can we create space in our youth ministries? How can we create space for that at the fields where we meet or the courts, right? How do we create space for that so they can slow down, experience that a little bit, and then it can be an encouragement of like, hey, like, this actually needs to be a part of your everyday life, and here's why. And it goes back to my experience at camp, right? Like doing the Spiritual Formation Society stuff and creating space for silence and just standing and waiting quite awkwardly at times. And just watching students not being able to handle the space and like needing to fill it, whether it be through conversation, whether it be through cracking jokes, whether it be through pulling their phone out. And then just saying, hey, like, look, we've had this 30-second space of silence and you needed to fill it. What for?
Why?
Ooh.
Bless you.
Yeah, what did you need to fill it for?
Yeah.
And so, and then noticing that, like, it's hard for me to sit with myself. It's hard for me to sit with my thoughts. It's hard for me to feel the things that I feel. But that's necessary for you to feel those things and then give them to the Lord or meet God there in those places, in your life, in your heart, in your mind. Because part of it is the reason why we've always got a phone in our face, the reason why we're always needing to watch something or eat something or do something is because we don't want to sit with ourselves. We don't want to sit with the pain that we feel, the doubt, the shame, the fear, the guilt, any of those types of things. And so we fill that space instead of engaging with what it is that's going on internally and ultimately seeking God in the midst of that. Right? Because when we do that, that's where we can find peace. That's where we can find joy. That's where we can find freedom from our burdens, right? But once again, it's awareness, right? We can't get freedom from those things unless we're willing to engage with those things, right?
I agree with you 100%.
But our world is designed for us to not have to engage with those things and continue to medicate.
Distracted.
But that pushes us further down the road of convenience, further down the road of being disconnected from self, and ultimately further down the road of destruction and harm to self, right?
Yeah, I agree with you.
And so I would say silence and solitude is something that I think a spiritual discipline that should be at the forefront of what we're trying to teach to this next generation. Like, yo, you need space away from people. You need space away from your phone. You need space away from TV, from work, school, all of those things. You need space to breathe, see what's going on inside, and space to ultimately engage God.
Right. I agree.
And if you'll do that, you'll live at a different pace because you'll come out of that space feeling different, seeing the world differently.
Yeah.
And that's going to allow you to live culturally, not be hurried, not be rushed, not be panicked by things that happen around you because you're tapped in with your creator.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what they need to see in us. And I don't think they see it enough. And I'm just a part of that problem too. Like, I'm guilty of it.
That's fair. Yeah, me too, man. No doubt about that. I know that, yeah. Of course. I'm aware of that too. But you know, also it's just to lean in on more of what you were saying. I think the reason why they could be more tapped in with the creator is because they trust the creator, right? I've left times in prayer where I'm like, look, man, I trust you. I trust you. I feel that, bro. Like, afraid of a thought, because thoughts have a very interesting way of making things be perceived as real.
Correct.
When it's not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know what we talk about all the time, right?
Yep.
It's like, it's not real.
But it feels like
it feels real. Right.
And here's the thing.
Yeah.
I think I wrestle with this some, but I feel like maybe we can say it is real, but it's not true.
Explain it. That's
so.
Explain it.
So, like, here's an example, right? I hear from a friend that you're talking bad about me behind my back.
Yeah.
And now I'm pissed.
Yeah.
What I'm feeling is real. I'm angry at you.
Yeah.
but it's not actually true that you were talking bad about me.
Yeah, I get you.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so once I find out the truth, that is now obligated to become reality. Make sense?
Yeah.
So the truth is, Chris didn't say anything about you. And that still might take me a little bit to stop being angry. It's not like it's going to just disappear instantly.
Yeah.
It might take a day or two, or it
I
might take
hate
a couple
emotions.
minutes.
Yeah.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like I would say it's real in the sense that you are actually experiencing the thing. But is it actually true though? No. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think this is where we get into empiricism and all that stuff, right? Like the idea that like what I'm sensing and emoting is reality.
Yeah.
It might not be. And we could probably go as far to say is that it isn't.
Yeah.
It's a response to a perceived truth, right?
Yeah.
But we've got to determine, is that thing actually true? So I perceived that Chris is talking bad about me.
Yeah.
But did he actually do that?
That's a good point.
You see what I'm saying?
I likes that. I likes that because, well, diving into the truth is very scary. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Correct.
So how can I say this, man?
But I mean, I would say too, even to your point, diving into the truth, like we as Christians ascribe to the reality that the truth is not it's a who.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
So the truth is a person.
There we go. Okay.
And so now we have a active relationship with the truth.
I agree.
And he tells us, shows us, reveals to us what is true.
Yeah. Well, yes, I agree. But why though? And I think one of the reasons why is because he wants us to imitate him.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Which we talked about last time.
All this comes to how society ought to function ultimately, but we can just go down to the individual. There's no other way to pursue the image of Christ, or to know what to do, right? If you're not willing to dive into that. And I think a lot of people say they want truth, but I think they really don't want that.
Yeah, true.
Because truth requires some level of maturity, right? It requires that.
Well, yeah, in the face of it. So it presents you with something, and then you have to decide if you're going to do what is necessary once you're presented with this truth.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're going to discipline yourself, according to that truth.
Right? And so I think even when you talk about us, the influencers, pastors, the youth leaders, we have to be lovers of truth. And what did Christ say, right? He's the ones who worship God in spirit and in truth.
It's good.
Right? Spirit and in truth. And that's something that we have to lean into. I think the world sees enough discipline in the sense of success and millionaires, relationships and status, but I don't think they have seen success in spirit and truth. And I think that's something that we have to give them, right? We have to show them the success of spirit and truth. Now, it's not going to map onto the world, though.
I agree.
The one who is the one who succeeds in spirit and truth, Christ, Jesus, the prime example. Christ, who was perfect in worshiping spirit and truth, who imitated it well, was oppressed, poor, and murdered. And you understand what I'm saying? So it's not.
It might cost you something.
It might. Yeah,
no, it will.
It will cost you something.
The question is how much.
How much? But what I'm trying to get at is that spiritual discipline doesn't mean success, and it doesn't mean that you will have everything. Spiritual discipline means that you will be close to God, the Creator.
That's good.
That's what it ultimately means. And that's a struggle for us because we want
that's
to.
really good, because that's what we need to present to them. That's what we need to present to young people. Like,
Yes,
spiritual disciplines don't mean you'll have everything you want,
exactly.
but you'll have God.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
You have the one who determined all things. And I think that is that's the purpose of spiritual discipline, right?
That's good.
But we have to wrestle with that.
Mm-hmm.
We have to, because back to society, we have created currency. We have created politics and law. We have created capitalism. We have created businesses.
And then there's this little thing called sin.
There's this little thing called sin
that causes us to take those things and use them for our
for
advantage,
our own good. Yeah, for
at
our
the
own
expense
need.
of other people.
We have to deny that. And I think that's why spiritual discipline is really denied. And I think that's why a lot of people see discipline as a bad thing when it comes to spiritual discipline.
Yeah.
Because what is the actual true benefit? Is the benefit is that you get the creator. You come more close to the creator.
Yep.
Right? There's this book I'm now reading that you told me to read. It's called Godly Man.
Disciplines of a Godly Man.
Disciplines of a Godly Man. Now, I mean, his talk is to men, but this goes into all people in a sense of training and discipline, right? It's stripping yourself from the things that you know that holds you down, right? He put it in the sense of training yourself to be naked, right? Right. It's in the sense of the things that weigh you down, the things that you know holds you back, the things that keeps you from reaching your true potential. You gotta let those things go.
Yep.
You gotta take it off of you, right? He's training to be naked, right? And so in a sense, we can use that same thing as with God. It's like being more close to God. It's I'm taking off all the things so God can clothe me. So he can put he can put on what he wants to put on me. Unclothe me of all the things that my culture has told me, what my hood has taught me, or politics or anything, the hurts or the tears I've cried, all this I have covered up, my insecurities, my shame, when I self-hatred, when I tell myself things in the mirror that are negative and evil, and I believe those things, take all those things off me. I want you to clothe me. And I have to trust that. I have to trust that the clothes that he puts on me won't stain, it won't be stolen, and it won't wither away. That the texture itself is solid enough that it can hold me. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Not cheap clothes. This is expensive clothes that comes for free. You understand?
Mm-hmm. That's good, bro. Yeah.
So yeah, man, I think I'm sorry I keep rambling, bro, but this discipline thing, bro, it's necessary. And I think God gave us discipline so we can be close to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we have to resist the things that pull us further away from him.
Yeah.
And say yes to the things that draw us closer to him.
Yeah.
And I think our obligation is to discern, figure out what those things are for us as leaders, and then to do those things and demonstrate that to the young people around us, and then call them to live in the same type of way.
Yeah.
And maybe even go a little further and help them discover the specific and unique ways that spiritual disciplines benefit them. Because, there'll be things that, you might be an intellectual. So, worshiping God with your mind comes really easy.
Yeah.
You might be a creative. So worshiping God with your heart comes real easy.
Yeah.
You might be an athlete. Worshiping God with your body might come. You see what I'm saying? And so I think there's also tapping into those things. Like, hey, this is, and kind of helping people understand, like, hey, this is how I worship God in this way. This is how I feel incredibly close to him. Like discovering what that is and leaning into that and making that like a central part of your life. Because I think also for young people, they can feel like, well, I prayed the way you told me to. I read the Bible the way you told me to.
Yeah.
I fasted the way you told me to. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, well, number one, you got to do those things with consistency. Number two, what are the unique ways that God has crafted and shaped you? And if you'll engage God in those ways, you'll have a closeness and sweetness with him that you won't get any other way. I think it's also doing that work too and helping them figure that out.
Man, that's such a good, man. All right, look, I likes that because my question will be, why does something need to happen? Why? If something needs to happen, okay. Now I'm talking about the reward system because we are reward seekers. So I'm praying, reading, and fasting. If I'm doing the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
why does something need to happen in order for me to continue to do it? If I know that it's true, if I know that I need to do it, if I know it's necessary, if I know it's essential to my soul, why do I need to have a reward for it? Why can't I just do it because it's the right thing to do? And I think this is a struggle for a lot of us. I know for me as well. I seek for reward for my work.
Mm.
I seek for reward. Why do I work hard the way I do? Because I want a reward.
Yep.
I want a candy. I want a ribbon. I want Skittles.
Yeah,
right?
facts.
Right. I want a reward. I want the plate of chicken with mashed potatoes with biscuits and honey on top of it. I want that.
Amen.
Amen. But what if I don't get it? Does that mean it's not good? Right? How do I interpret work? And so I'm trying to get to the place where it's like, God, I'm going to do this even if you don't reward me.
That's good. And
I
think that's spiritual maturity.
Yes. Because I think we have to understand as Christians, your reward is at the end of the road.
Mm-hmm.
It's not here. The world doesn't know how to reward wisdom. It can't. Look at the celebrities and the people that own the mics. The world rewards foolishness. And it imitates that. The world imitates foolishness because it rewards it. If you want a reward for wisdom, your reward is at the end of the road.
That's good.
Okay? So what does that mean? You're going to have to be disciplined throughout your life without a reward.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Right?
Yeah, bro. Makes a lot of sense.
And so, I mean, I'm just saying, like, we have to understand we have to understand ultimately who's going to reward us for our work.
Mm.
Right? And I think once we understand who rewards us for our work, then I think we can understand the purpose of work, the purpose of discipline. Right? Are there things in this life that will come to you because of what you've done? Good, yeah. But it's not going to be a lot. Right? That's what I assume. I think you take more L's than you do W's.
True. I agree with that.
I think to help Gen Z understand, this is one thing that we have to help Gen Z understand and help other generations is that just because you don't see a reward for your work doesn't mean the work itself is not good.
I think that's why the wisdom literature is so important.
Correct.
And maybe that's where we should go in our next podcast.
Job, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, another episode in the books. Like we always say, beginning of the conversation, not the end. Questions, comments, concerns, hit us up.
Yes, sir.
We love you guys. We will talk to you soon. Peace.